Part 40. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 391. Chapter 391. A small dumpling like a human spirit. Emperor Yongchang would not look down upon concubine Yu. Before leaving, she told concubine Yu to take good care of her son before the prince's wedding. Concubine Yu was so angry that her eyes turned black. When good times are good, they are all your sons, but when bad times are bad, he becomes my son alone. After Emperor Yongchang left, concubine Yu overturned the wooden table in front of her. The palace people in the palace of Yu were all kneeling on the ground, and even the atmosphere did not dare to make more. No matter how much Aunt Ying tried to dissuade her, it still had no effect. In the blink of an eye, concubine Yu, who had destroyed the Yu palace, screamed, "Go and call the third prince in, and Yuning has agreed to invite him too." It was Fan Qinjiao who was walking all the way towards the palace gate. He looked at the bright lights on the other side of Yu palace and curled his lips silently. In her last life, concubine Yu often pulled her to act as a shield for Bailey Fengming. It's just that at that time, I had been completely brainwashed by the Fan family, and I stupidly followed concubine Yu's orders. In this life, she is still Fan Qinjiao, but she is no longer the melon skin who is at the mercy of others. Fan Qinjiao was thinking when he suddenly saw two groups of things blocking the way not far away. One of them, Fan Qinjiao, was a familiar one, Chaiwu with shiny black fur. At this moment, Chaiwu was blocked by a small dumpling. The little dumpling looked to be about 5 or 6 years old. His hair was tied on top of his head with a golden crown, and his fair and tender face looked even more plump against the backdrop of an emerald green robe. At this time, the little dumpling was facing away from Fan Qinjiao and squatting facing Chaiwu. Looking from a distance, the height of one person and one cat is a perfect match. When Chaiwu saw Fan Qinjiao, his eyes almost burst out with golden light, but before he could walk towards Fan Qinjiao, he saw a small short white hand stretched out in front of him. As the little hand opened little by little, a piece of sucrose was revealed inside. Xiao Chuanzi looked at Chaiwu in embarrassment and struggled a lot and said, "I only have the sucrose left at this moment. How about you just touch it for me and I will give you the sucrose?" After finishing speaking, he seemed to regret it, and quickly added, "Maybe I'll give you half. My uncle said it's hard to eat too much sweet food, so wouldn't it be just right for each of us to have half?" Fan Qinjiao. Is it okay to bargain with a cat? Chi Wu seemed to be anxious to find Fan Qinjiao, so he stood up suddenly. The little dumpling who was thinking about how to split the sucrose into two was startled and fell to the ground clutching his chest. Soon, Xiao Chuanzi's face began to turn blue, and his lips turned purple. Fan Qinjiao quickly stepped forward and laid Xiao Chuanzi down on the ground. One hand accurately pressed on his wrist, and the other hand pulled his cumbersome clothes. One breath comes in two, one is strong and the other is weak. Fan Qinjiao's eyes darkened, and he quickly took out the needle bag he carried with him, pulled out 3 silver needles at the same time, and searched for the acupuncture points on Xiao Chuanzi's white chest to drop the silver needles. As Xiao Chuanzi's breathing gradually became calmer, Fan Qinjiao took out a few more silver needles and landed on several large acupuncture points on Xiao Chuanzi's back. In the distance, noisy footsteps suddenly sounded. Xiao Chuanzi, who had just regained some consciousness, struggled to look at Fan Qinjiao, his dark eyes full of pleading, "Sister, please, don't let anyone here find me, okay?" Fan Qinjiao nodded silently and carried Xiao Chuanzi into a rockery. When the footsteps gradually faded away, Xiao Chuanzi leaned against the rockery in a daze and breathed heavily. The little dumpling next to him was white and tender, but Fan Qinjiao didn't remember any prince in the palace who was this age. The 8th prince in the palace is the youngest, and they have all reached the age of marriage. A peculiar fragrance caught Fan Qinjiao's attention. Fan Qinjiao moved slightly closer, looking for Xiao Chuanzi's breath, and smelling the aroma became even stronger. Let's take a look at Xiaochuan's clothes and the recent rumors in the palace. Fan Qinjiao seemed to already know the identity of this little dumpling. Xiaochuanzi opened his eyes at some point and looked at Fan Qinjiao longingly. What he said was extremely serious. Sister, even if you have saved my life, we are still different between men and women. Fan Qinjiao. There is indeed some truth to this statement. It was just that Xiaochuanzi still had a silver needle stuck in his body, so Fan Qinjiao had to pull out the silver needle first, and then take the initiative to stay away. Xiaochuanzi jumped off the rockery and looked up at Fan Qinjiao. After a while, he said again, I can't repay my sister for saving my life. Why don't I give my sucrose to my sister? If we can meet again someday, I will definitely give it to her. Thank you very much, sister. This sucrose is quite useful. It can be used to attract cats and dogs, and it can be used as a token to give to others. Facing the sincere little dumpling in front of him, Fan Qinjiao did not take advantage of him. He just said softly, since you want to repay me, how about you listen to my suggestion? Xiaochuanzi nodded seriously. I just smelled a very special smell on you. Your coma today must be related to the smell. I can help you suppress the harm of the smell to you, but don't tell others, okay? Xiaochuan's identity was too special. Fan Qinjiao not only couldn't reveal his identity, but also asked him to help conceal it. Obviously, this little dumpling's body is already controlled by a drug. It's just that this medicine is not to treat Xiaochuan's disease, but to control Xiaochuan's consciousness. Fan Qinjiao already knows why someone is trying so hard to control this group. It is precisely because of this that Fan Qinjiao will not let that person's trick succeed. Xiaochuanzi blinked doubtfully, but I will still drink that sweet water in the future. Fan Qinjiao comforted him, you can drink whatever you want. As long as you nod, no matter how much you drink, it won't do any harm to your body. Xiaochuanzi always felt that this matter should be discussed with the emperor's uncle first. But the emperor's uncle also warned him that he must not expose his identity to outsiders casually. Xiaochuanzi is very confused. Fan Qinjiao waited silently and did not continue to coax. Even if she really does it for the good health of this little dumpling, she has her own interests. So, she was not willing to force this little group. Seeing that Fan Qinjiao was silent, Xiaochuanzi seemed to have gone through a very painful ideological struggle before timidly pulling on Fan Qinjiao's clothes and said, come on, come on. After saying that, he closed his eyes sadly. Fan Qinjiao is really helpless. She is saving lives, not killing them. He then took out 3 silver needles from the needle bag, searched for the acupuncture points on Xiaochuan's abdomen, and inserted the needles. Because it is necessary to remove excess things from Xiaochuan's body, the pain will definitely be worse than before when the acupuncture is applied. Xiao Tuanzi bit his lip, his face turned pale with pain, but he didn't cry out. A furry thing suddenly came over. Xiaochuanzi opened his eyes in surprise and saw Chaiwu holding his hand with his big furry head. The surprise in Xiaochuan's eyes turned into surprise in an instant. He hugged Chaiwu's neck, which relieved the pain caused by the acupuncture. Chaiwu is like Taxu, it is extremely spiritual. Maybe it was because he felt guilty for scaring Xiaochuanzi that he was willing to take the initiative to get close to strangers. A quarter of an hour later, Fan Qinjiao put away the silver needle. Chaiwu finally got rid of Xiaochuan's clutches. Xiaochuanzi touched his body in surprise. Huh? Why does my body feel so much lighter? Could it be that my illness is cured? Facing this little dumpling's 3 consecutive questions, Fan Qinjiao shook his head helplessly. Xiaochuan's disease is not so easy to cure. In the distance, there were noisy footsteps again. Xiaochuan's expression changed. Although he was very reluctant to leave Chaiwu in front of him, he still said politely to Fan Qinjiao, Sister, I'm afraid I have to go back. Fan Qinjiao nodded, I hope you will remember your agreement with me. Xiao Tuanzi's small face showed great affirmation. That's natural. Once a word is spoken, it's hard to follow it. The sound of footsteps approaching from far away interrupted Xiao Tuanzi's unfinished words. Xiao Chuanzi reluctantly waved to Fan Qinjiao before turning around and running out of the rockery. Fan Qinjiao looked at the little dumpling walking away, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Perhaps, as the Empress said, this visit to the palace will be extremely lively. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 392. Chapter 392, Being clever is being misled by cleverness. Standing in the rockery, Fan Qinjiao waited until the footsteps outside completely disappeared before walking out. Bent down and touched Chaiwu's head, which was scratched by Xiao Chuanzi, and put his handkerchief into Chaiwu's mouth. Go back, it's time for me to leave the palace. Chaiwu could come over at this time because Bailey Fengming ordered him. I'm afraid that Bailey Fengming had heard about the emperor's methods of sowing discord and asked Chaiwu to look for her. Chaiwu put the handkerchief in his mouth, looked at Fan Qinjiao silently, then turned and walked towards the East Palace. Fan Qinjiao continued walking towards the palace gate. The first snow that fell a few days ago has already been cleared away by the palace staff. The spacious palace road stretches as far as the eye can see. Suddenly, a group of people came from not far away. Accompanied and supported by several palace servants, a young woman in gorgeous clothes was slowly coming towards the side. When the woman came closer, Fan Qinjiao finally recognized her. It was Yuning, who was now favored by the Holy Spirit, who agreed. Yuning was in a hurry to go back to concubine Yu to summon her, but unexpectedly she bumped into Fan Qinjiao, who was about to leave the palace. Looking at the face welded deep in her memory, Yuning's heart was inevitably filled with jealousy and hatred, but on her face, she still smiled faintly. I didn't expect to meet here, meet. It seems that she can't figure out Fan Qinjiao's identity, so Yuning just looks at Fan Qinjiao over and over again. Yun agree. Fan Qinjiao stood on the spot and called out coldly, seemingly as a greeting, but she bit the word promise extremely hard. Whether she is the princess now or the crown princess in the future, a promise does not qualify her to kneel down and say hello. Yuning didn't know whether Fan Qinjiao did it intentionally or unintentionally. The word promise fell into her ears like a needle prick, and even the anger in her heart was aroused. Looking at Fan Qinjiao in front of her again, Yuning suddenly shook off the hand of the palace attendant beside her and took a few steps forward. Fan Qinjiao stood where he was, still looking calm and composed. The people around the palace looked at it with fear. Who doesn't know that this Yun promised to be a person who used to serve the queen, but now she has transformed into a phoenix with the help of Princess Yu. And this Princess Jingping is the queen's future daughter-in-law. When these two people collide, the sparks will definitely be gone, but the fire will definitely be there. But just when the hearts of the palace people were in their throats, they heard Yuning smile again. I just happened to want to go to the palace gate to do something. I wonder if Princess Jingping would like to come with me? Fan Qinjiao seemed not to see the provocation in Yuning's eyes, and smiled and nodded. Of course, it's good. There are many things she fears in this life. She is afraid that the people she cares about will make the same mistake again. She was afraid that she would not be able to protect her relatives on her own. But in Fan Qinjiao's so-called fearful dictionary, there is never the word Yuning. Seeing this, the palace people who were originally guarding Yuning took a few steps back and followed the two masters. Yuning looked at Fan Qinjiao, who was walking side by side with her, and the smile on her face was indescribably weird. It's been a long time since we said goodbye after traveling to the lake. I didn't expect that Princess Jingping would be there when we saw each other again. She is already a princess. Fan Qinjiao remained calm. Things are unpredictable, and who knows what will happen tomorrow. Hearing this, Yuning laughed softly, but I seem to be different from Princess Jingping. For some reason, I always have dreams recently. In the dreams, people who block my way are cut into pieces, and it's even more difficult to see. Life would be worse than death, it's really satisfying to think about it. Fan Kinjao raised his eyebrows slightly, thinking about it in his mind, but his face remained calm. It's just a dream, why should Yunde take it seriously? Yunying smiled and said, I wonder if Princess Jingping has ever heard of the word dreams come true. Although it is a dream, maybe the things in the dream will really become a reality. Fan Kinjao seemed like he nodded in understanding. If that's the case, then I can only wish Yun that all her wishes will come true, but she must be careful when she agrees. As far as I know, there are still things in this world where what you ask for is not received, and cleverness is rewarded. Smart is a misnomer. Yunying's face turned dark instantly. Don't think she can't hear such a naked curse. Fan Kinjao, such a sharp-tongued man, really thinks he has a chance to win now. Yunying rolled her eyebrows, suppressed the anger in her heart, and laughed again. Princess Jingping is really quick to talk, but... Before she finished speaking, Yunying suddenly slipped and fell in the opposite direction of Fan Kinjao. From a distance, this scene looks more like Fan Kinjao and Yunying didn't get along, so he pushed Yunying. Although Yunying only made a small promise, she is now the most favored person in front of the emperor. If something really happened today, Fan Kinjao would not be able to explain it clearly. Suddenly, a hand grasped Yunying's wrist. Yunying was stunned. Before she could react, she saw Fan Kinjao hugging her and placing his body under hers. Yunying felt bad, but it was too late to struggle. Soon, the two people rolled down to the ground together. Yunying didn't know the pain, but Fan Kinjao, who was pressed underneath, had a look of pain on his face. Looking at Fan Kinjao who fell to the ground, Yunying's face turned dark with anger. The palace people behind him hurried over and helped the two masters up at the same time. The palace officials who had no idea were extremely grateful to Princess Jingping for her help. I really want to thank Princess Jingping for her thoughtfulness in what happened just now. As soon as these words came out, Yunying's face turned even darker. The palace people already believed that Fan Kinjao saved her, so how could she frame Fan Kinjao who actually wanted to harm her? Just when Yunying was feeling upset that her trick had not succeeded, Fan Kinjao's next words seemed to push her into a bottomless abyss. Can't even climb up. I saw Fan Kinjao patting his clothes gently and walking in front of Yunying. Just at this time, the guards patrolling the safety of the palace passed by. Fan Kinjao's neither gentle nor serious voice was enough for everyone to hear clearly. Yun promised that she is pregnant, but you have to be careful about your body. Yunying. Damn it, Fan Kinjao, did he really have to do such an incredible job? Absolutely. Fan Kinjao doesn't think so. Just now she accidentally touched Yunying's wrist. Judging from her pulse, Yunying was nearly 2 months pregnant. For the concubines in the palace, the pregnancy time is not short. But the last time she left the palace, the queen was obviously unaware of it. Obviously, both Yunying and concubine Yu were deliberately concealing the truth. The emperor is already over 50 years old, and now that he is old and has a son, he attaches great importance to it. If this child really has something to do with green melon and tofu, no one can afford it. Fan Kinjao would never allow this hidden danger to exist. Simply putting it on the table can be regarded as letting the hidden crisis surface. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 393. Chapter 393. Congratulations to Mr. Yun on the birth of your son. The people in the palace were all dumbfounded. They had been serving Yun Cheng for so long, but they still didn't know about this kind of thing. The guards were worried that Yoon had promised something, and they would also be responsible when the time came, so they hurriedly went to see the imperial doctor. For a time, the originally quiet palace gate became very lively. Yuning glared at Fan Kinjao fiercely as the palace people helped her hurriedly. Fan Kinjao smiled slightly and accepted the order. She has long said that being smart can lead to misunderstandings. Yuning was about to faint from anger. If it hadn't been for the support of the palace people, she would have fallen to the ground long ago. Seeing that more and more palace people gathered here, Fan Kinjao had no time to stand here anymore. But when she turned to leave, she looked at Yuning and spoke softly again. Only this time, she only moved her lips but did not make a sound. But the warbler could still see clearly. Fan Kinjao said, "Fanswining, you are fine." For a moment, Yuning's heart was in her throat. Soon, what happened in front of the palace gate was noisy and the palace knew all about it. Empress Zhengzi was not surprised when she heard that Yuning was pregnant. That day in the imperial study, she noticed something was wrong with Yuning. However, concubine Yu looked at Yuning as if she had her own eyes, so she couldn't rush to the imperial doctor to see her. Unexpectedly, it has only been a few days before it became clear. However, this also proved Queen Zhen 11's guess. The reason why the emperor followed Yuning's suggestion and went to the palace was because he was worried about the child in Yuning's belly. Lily said worriedly, Yun promised that she was pregnant, but she still made preparations to go to the palace. If you don't have other thoughts, who will believe it? Empress Zhen 11 knew it well, but she didn't care. Some things don't just happen if you hope they don't happen. But no matter what Yu Yagong has in mind, concubine Yu cannot laugh now. Empress Zhen 11 was right, concubine Yu was really angry to death. She had been suppressing the news that Yuning was pregnant, just because she wanted to use Yuning's pregnancy to gain various conveniences from the emperor. After all, the emperor valued Yuning's pregnancy very much. But now that the dragon seed in Yuning's belly has been exposed like this, how can she still laugh? At that time, if the emperor is even slightly partial to Yu Palace, others will say that he is taking advantage of Yuning's belly. Concubine Yu, who has dominated the harem for so many years, how could she get used to hearing such ridicule from others? Besides, there are so many eyes in the harem. Who exactly has what thoughts? Who knows clearly? The child in Yuning's belly is the target of public criticism. It is no longer that concubine Yu can seek benefits from Yuning's belly, but the key is to find ways to keep Yuning's child. The emperor has such great expectations for this child. If the child is really gone, the chess piece Yuning will be useless. Concubine Yu's face looks ugly. It was Bailey Rongs who was sitting in Yu Palace, and his face didn't look good either. Having already been scolded by his mother and concubine, and now he heard that Yuning was pregnant, how could he accept this sudden fact? If Yuning just made a simple promise from the palace, Bailey Rongs would not care. But the crux of the matter is that Yu Ying is not at all. Concubine Yu looked at her son's darkened face, suppressed the anger in her heart and said, "You had to make this plan when you sent the person to the palace. Besides, she is just a woman. No matter what she looks like, as long as she can do it for what you use is enough." Bailey Rongs frowned, "That's what I said, but..." "But what?" Concubine Yu interrupted directly. Seeing her son becoming more and more addicted to women, concubine Yu couldn't help but say, "You are always so indecisive. Don't forget that people who want to achieve great things must not waste their time on women. One day, if you really sit on that chair, what kind of woman do you want?" These words awakened Bailey Rongs. Seeing her son's expression gradually calming down, concubine Yu paused and said, "Tomorrow we will leave for the palace. You don't need to worry about other things. You just need to take care of yourself. Remember, you only have one chance this time." Bailey Rongs frowned, still a little frightened. This matter is not trivial. If it fails, Concubine Yu looked stern. Now that the prince is more and more valued by the emperor, if it continues like this, do you think you can still sit on that chair? I'm afraid that before you even touch it, the prince will naturally change from a prince to a prince. New emperor, this visit to the palace is the best opportunity, you must not look forward or backward. Bailey Rongs felt very agitated after hearing what his mother and concubine said. Of course he understood that from the beginning of obscurity to the time when the prince was summoned by his father, he already had the momentum to crush him. In addition, Fan Kinjao was about to marry him, and he was already being summoned by the sixth prince. The recommended Zhou family will become a big worry for him. In this case, a trip to the palace seems to be powerful for him, but in fact he must be extremely careful. However, the mother-in-law is right about one thing. This visit to the palace is indeed a rare opportunity. Concubine Yu finally thought about it when she saw her son, and her gloomy face became much brighter. The palace is not as good as the royal palace. Even if there are guards accompanying you, it is much more relaxed than the royal palace. As long as there are no surprises in the plan, then there will be no more crown prince in Ziliang. Your Majesty, Yun promised to come and Ying came in and announced. Concubine Yu nodded, let her come in. As soon as Bailey Rongs heard that Yuning was coming, he turned around and left. Just happened to pass by the Yu Ying who was walking through the door. Yuning looked at Bailey Rongs, who didn't even look at her, and felt so heavy that she couldn't breathe. Concubine Yu stood up with a rare smile and took the initiative to hold Yuning's hand and let her sit next to her. The people in the palace know it. We just need to be more careful in the future. Yuning lowered her head, not knowing what to say. Concubine Yu felt extremely uncomfortable when she saw Yuning who dared to make fun of her even before she gave birth to a child. But no matter what, she had to let Yuning give birth to the child. Thinking of this, Concubine Yu whispered softly, Fan Kinjao's hidden danger will be eliminated sooner or later. You don't need to be so anxious. Besides, your body is not suitable for working too much now. It's better to stay away from Fan Kinjao in the future. Yuning raised her head in disbelief. Concubine Yu is asking her to watch Fan Kinjao take a detour in the future? Concubine Yu obviously saw the displeasure in Yuning's eyes. So what if you're not happy? As long as Yuning's child is born, the emperor will definitely love Yuning even more. By then, she and her son will have a guarantee. Yuning felt really cold when she saw that Concubine Yu was destined to win. That's it if she really is Yuning. But the problem is, she is not at all. She came back this time to stay with the third prince forever. More importantly, let Fan Kinjao be trampled under his feet just like in his dream. Because Fan Kinjao was right, she was not Yuning at all. Concubine Yu saw that Yuning's face was not very good looking, so she looked at her and asked, is it possible that Fan Kinjao saw something? Yuning was stunned and quickly shook her head, no. Concubine Yu was relieved at this, it's okay if you don't. That little Fan Kinjao is full of evil ideas. If she discovers your identity, what kind of trouble might happen? Yuning should be happy when she heard Concubine Yu cursing Fan Kinjao, but she couldn't laugh at all. Concubine Yu's pride is innate, who can catch her eye? But Fan Kinjao can do it. And it can make Concubine Yu so fearful. Looking down at her still flat belly again, Yuning bit her lips unwillingly. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 394. Chapter 394, Envy of Others' Favor. On the 23rd day of the 12th lunar month, everyone accompanied the emperor to the palace. Going to the palace every year is a laborious matter, so being able to travel with the emperor is the dream of everyone in the court. Even if it is a tiring journey, it is very satisfying. Since all the princes were married, the number of people going to the palace this time increased a lot. Coupled with some of the female relatives of important officials in the court, this trip can be said to be overcrowded. It's just that unlike the other female relatives who were extremely excited in the carriage, Fan Kinjao was very quiet. Tao Yuxian himself likes to be quiet, and Mu Yan also has a quiet temperament, so it would be difficult for the three of them to liven up in a carriage together. Fan Kinjao was sitting on the soft couch, thinking about the day he met Yunying. Yunying's pregnancy indeed caused quite a stir in the palace, but the storm was soon suppressed by an invisible force. The only person who can do this in the palace is the emperor. As expected, it is extremely precious to have a son when you are old. Fan Kinjao called out Fan Swinning's name that day, which was quite probing. Yunying's reaction also gave Fan Kinjao the answer he expected. Unexpectedly, Fan Swinning could do this in order to please concubine Yu. Just like Fan Kinjao in the previous life, he was led by the nose and refused to change his mind even if he suffered a head. It's just that Fan Swinning's identity now is extremely embarrassing. Originally, he was devoted to Bailey Wrongs, but in the end, he became the favored promise of the emperor. Although this move can help Bailey Wrongs stand more firmly in front of the emperor, is Fan Swinning really willing to stay like this? Tull. The car window next to me was suddenly knocked by someone. Fan Kinjao regained his composure, opened the window, and saw Xiaoxian riding on horseback. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince asked his ministers to deliver this to Princess Jingping. There are a lot of snow obstacles along the way. I'm afraid I won't be able to take a break until afternoon, Xiaoxian said, handing over the food basket in his hand. Although everyone was accompanying them, they were all sitting in carriages, but after all, there were many people with mixed opinions, and Xiaoxian's attitude toward Fan Kinjao lacked the familiarity it had in the past. But even so, it still makes other people jealous. With the current young master of the East Palace, who is a high-ranking official. Apart from the prince, who else has such an honor that can shock him into serving tea and water? Whether it is the official ladies who have not left the cabinet or the princes who are also sitting in the carriage, they are all envious. Compared with Fan Kinjao, who was pampered by the prince, where were their husbands? Fan Kinjao naturally knew how many people were looking at this basket of cakes. It's just that now that everything is in front of her, she has no reason to push it back. There is a lot of work and a lot of work. Xiaoxian nodded before riding his horse and chasing the team in front. Tao Yuxian frowned slightly, the prince's actions are too eye-catching. Fan Kinjao thought that there was still a long way to go, so he highlighted some of the recent events. Tao Yuxian knew that the marriage granted by the emperor was not as simple as it seemed, but he did not expect that it could be so obvious that Fan Kinjao and the prince could monitor each other. When I think of such a person controlling the life and death of Ziliang, I can't help but worry. I just hope that the prince will not be the second emperor. In the past, Fan Kinjao would hesitate, but now he answered with great certainty, "Grandma, don't worry, it won't happen." Tao Yuxian looked at Fan Kinjao's unwavering gaze and was quite surprised, but thinking about his granddaughter, she was not an ordinary little girl who didn't care about others, so she didn't continue to say anything. As the saying goes, people are blessed with children and grandchildren, and she could never stay with Xiao Kinjao for the rest of her life. Mu Yan, who was sitting nearby, couldn't say anything, so she opened the food basket. Unexpectedly, the seemingly unattractive food basket was actually filled with 3 layers of cakes of various styles. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is really interested in the third sister. I'm afraid that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince doesn't know what the third sister likes to eat, so he prepares a portion of each item. Fan Kinjao looked at Mu Yan and smiled, "Someone will love you so much in the future." Tao Yuxian looked at Mu Yan and asked, "There are quite a few talented people going to the palace this time. Our Hua family is not a high-ranking mansion, and we don't have that many rules. If you like someone, you can also tell Grandma quietly." Mu Yan's fair face turned red instantly. "Grandma, the third sister will not get haircut until the next year, so why is she in a hurry?" Fan Kinjao helped smooth things over, saying, "The fourth sister is still young, so her judgment of people is not as reliable as that of my grandmother. That's why my grandfather gave up the opportunity to go to the palace to my grandmother." Tao Yuxian snorted coldly. It seemed that he had given her this opportunity to learn more, but in fact, he took advantage of the emperor's absence from the main city to go to Huihe alone to see his son. That dead old man. The palace is not far from the main city, nor is it close. After all, the emperor was too old to endure such hard work, so he stopped and walked along the way. It took 2 days before he entered the palace. It is said that we will accompany the emperor to celebrate the new year in the palace, but not everyone can enter the palace. Except for the concubines, the emperor and the princes, as well as the accompanying regent and prince of Genii kingdom, everyone else had to stay in the villa outside the palace. Unfortunately, it started to snow heavily just as everyone arrived at the palace. Everyone huddled in the carriage, shivering from the cold. Empress Zhen 11 took the initiative and suggested, "There are many people around the emperor. It is better to send some of them out first and arrange for others to enter Zhuangzi. It is always better than being cold in the carriage all the time." As a result, before the emperor could nod in agreement, he heard a deep male voice coming from the carriage next door. "What's the point in letting the Huang family wait for others?" It was just one sentence that directly changed the emperor's mind. Concubine Yu was very happy when she heard that Queen Zhen 11 had eaten at the regent of Genii kingdom. Even looking at Yuning sitting next to her made concubine Yu happy. "It seems that you have indeed taken good care of the crown prince of Genii during this period. Yuning, you must be stable." Yuning took the opportunity to nod and said, "Don't worry, madam." Actually, Yuning was also surprised in her heart. Although she had been in contact with the Prince of Genii Kingdom during this period, she had never met the regent. Let alone talk about wooing. But now that concubine Yu has put this credit on her head, she will certainly have to bear it. Only when you make concubine Yu happy can you relax your vigilance towards her. Soon, everyone heard the news about the arrogance of the regent of Genii Kingdom. Faced with the status of the regent of Genii Kingdom, no one dared to complain even if everyone was still frozen in a ball in the carriage. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 395. Chapter 395 Mr. Zhou deliberately looking for trouble. Half an hour later, when the arrangements at the palace were complete, the others were arranged into Zhuangzi. It is said to be Zhuangzi, but this place is actually no smaller than the palace. Fan Kinjao was placed in a relatively remote small courtyard. With 2 entrances and 2 exits, it is quite spacious for 3 people. Because he was accompanying the Holy Master, Fan Kinjao did not bring Ningguan with him, let alone Lanja and Ningtian. There are masters in the palace both inside and outside the palace. Bringing people here who know martial arts will only cause trouble for themselves. Tao Yuxian has been jolting around for several days and is already tired. Fan Kinjao first sent his grandmother to rest, then accompanied Mu Yan to say a few words, and finally walked to his small yard and opened the package in his arms. Taxiu, who had been sleeping until he took off in place, seemed to smell the fresh air, and finally reluctantly opened his eyes. Fan Kinjao put Ta Shui on the ground and let it walk around to familiarize itself with the environment. After struggling for several days, Fan Kinjao was also very sleepy. After lying on the bed for a while, he fell into a drowsy sleep. The dream that had not bothered me for a long time came again. Only this time, Fan Kinjao dreamed that Fan Swining died not long after her death. And he had to die well. He was hung in front of the palace gate, his flesh and bones were cut out, and he died with his eyes open. Fan Kinjao naturally didn't think this dream was true. Although she didn't know what happened after her death in her previous life. But considering that she is notorious and full of evil deeds, who can take revenge for her? When I opened my eyes again, It was getting dark, but the heavy snow continued. Lily, who was next to Queen Zhen 11, came to visit in person. When she saw Fan Qinjiao, she smiled and said, "The queen said that since Princess Jingping was accused of being married, she has not had a good meeting with Princess Jingping. Now she just has the opportunity, let Princess Jingping go to the palace to have dinner." The queen sent Lily to her house with such a big name, she was obviously trying to show off to the emperor. Even though Fan Qinjiao and the empress knew what the marriage was, in the eyes of the emperor, even if he granted the marriage, the queen would still look down on her, a princess with a low status. So the queen naturally wanted to send someone to visit her at this time, pretending to accept her according to the emperor's wishes. "Aunt Lily, please wait a moment and allow me to report to my grandmother first." "It's natural, Princess Jingping, please do it." Lily smiled and nodded, and the smile on Princess Jingping's face became deeper and deeper. No wonder the queen is so fond of Princess Jingping. Looking at his intelligence, there is no need to waste words on everything. A smart person can understand everything with just one click. Not long after, Fan Qinjiao followed Lily out of Zhuangzi. Along the way, it stimulated the eyes of many princes and concubines. They are also daughters-in-law. Those who have been married have not yet been summoned. They are invited to dinner before they have come to the door. This difference. Tisk tisk tisk. It's really incomparable. The sour gas condensed in the air can be said to be soaring to the sky. Lily still felt a little choked until she left Zhuangzi. This time in the palace, the queen and his highness cannot be too casual. Princess Jingping should be careful. Fan Qinjiao understood Lily's good intentions. "Let Aunt worry about it, I will do it." This trip to the palace is to knit together all those who are at peace and those who are at odds. It is strange to be able to be at ease. A quarter of an hour later, Fan Qinjiao followed Lily into the palace. Whether the queen is favored or not, her status in Ziliang cannot be denied. So now, the palace where the queen lives is next to the palace where the emperor fell. As for the other concubines, they have to stand aside. Queen Zhen 11, who had been waiting for a long time, saw Fan Qinjiao entering the door and waved hurriedly, "There is no need to salute. Come and sit with me." Fan Qinjiao nodded slightly and gently sat down next to the queen. The round table in front of her was already filled with food, but the queen had no intention of starting a banquet. "I'm afraid that tonight's dinner is not just for her and the queen. Last time, I just noticed something was wrong with Yuning, but I didn't find it easy to investigate. I didn't expect you to show her off all of a sudden." This made concubine Yu quiet a lot. Zhen 11 the queen smiled, otherwise she would not know what concubine Yu was going to do. "I just discovered it by chance." Fan Qinjiao did not intend to tell Yuning's true identity. The queen looks soft-hearted, but if she is really like this, how could she have been the master of the harem all these years? Furthermore, after several consecutive contacts, Fan Qinjiao really felt that the queen's methods were clean and neat. Sometimes even she feels ashamed of herself. With the queen's methods, if Yuning's identity is known, it will be difficult for Yuning to survive. Fan Qinjiao didn't want Yuning to die so early. The road to this life is still so long. If Yuning dies too early, wouldn't it be boring? Revenge is always better if you repay it a little bit. Fan Qinjiao will never forget that Fan Swining tortured her for more than 10 years in her previous life. Concubine Yu is hiding the child in Yuning's belly like this. I'm afraid she will cause a big disturbance in the palace this time. Empress Zhen 11 was too familiar with concubine Yu's tricks. Perhaps, concubine Yu had already thought about everything. At that time, the child in Yuning's belly will be concubine Yu's gold medal to avoid death. As he was talking, he heard footsteps coming in. Fan Qinjiao followed the sound and glanced sideways, and saw Bailey Fengming stepping in, followed by a young man of the same age. The young man did not expect that there were other people in the queen's palace, and was also stunned. Bailey Fengming took the initiative and said, "Princess Jingping, Zhou Renjian. It turned out to be the grandson of the Zhou family. Fan Qinjiao stood up with a smile and said, "Young Master Zhou." Zhou Renjian looked at Fan Qinjiao, and then said to Bailey Fengming beside him, "Why don't we go out to eat? This will save us from disturbing the queen." "What are you disturbing the queen?" It was simply an act of neglecting Fan Qinjiao. It should not be too obvious. Empress Zhen 11 cannot let people leave just as she wants. I specially waited for you to have dinner, but you ended up going out to eat instead. Could it be that I am disturbing your mood? Zhou Renjian had been the prince's companion for a long time and was familiar with the queen. The queen is serious about her words. I just don't want to sit with people I don't know well. As if she didn't hear the last part of the sentence, Queen Zhen 11 hurriedly greeted people to sit down. "He's here, so I'll sit with you for a while longer. It's been a long time since I've seen the young master of the Zhou family." Having said that, Zhou Renjian could no longer leave. Just as he sat down behind him, he didn't even look at Fan Qinjiao the whole time, and still regarded Fan Qinjiao as if he were nothing. Although his grandfather and Zhou Chun didn't move very close, the junior members of the Zhou family often got together. Especially since Zhou Renjian and Zhou Ningxi grew up together, the relationship between the two is even closer. Therefore, whether it was Fan Qinjiao who once brought a coffin in front of the palace gate to confront his uncle, or whether Fan Qinjiao made Zhou Ningxi lose face in front of Zhou Ningxi, Zhou Renjian was always the same. Clearly. Even now Zhou Chun has the good sense to turn the feud with Fan Qinjiao into friendship, but in the eyes of Zhou Ningxi, Fan Qinjiao is still hateful, and is the chief culprit for marrying her best friend Princess Yunnan to Xianbei. The culprit. Zhou Renjian was immersed in Zhou Ningxi's curses all day long. How could he be friendly to Fan Qinjiao? Of course Fan Qinjiao could see Zhou Renjian's hostility. I think the queen knew this very well, so she thought of organizing a dinner party to alleviate the embarrassment. After all, if Zhou Renjian can really return to the prince, the Zhou family will naturally stand behind the prince. A jade-burnt Buddha's hand appeared on Fan Qinjiao's food plate. Fan Qinjiao raised his head and saw Bailey Fengming smiling and saying, "Try it, the Buddha's hand made by the palace is quite famous." Fan Qinjiao took a bite and found that it tasted really good. "It's just that I haven't finished eating what's in my mouth, but there's something new put in front of me." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 396. Chapter 396. Are all future daughters-in-law such good drinkers? Fan Qinjiao was really hungry, and he didn't have much scruples in front of the queen and Bailey Fengming. She is not the protagonist tonight anyway, so she might as well eat in peace. It was rare for Bailey Fengming to see Fan Qinjiao eating so comfortably, so he just rolled up his sleeves and served the dishes all the time. Empress Zhen 11 had actually seen it a long time ago, but had no intention of disturbing her at all. It is such a rare thing for a son and his daughter-in-law to love each other. Why should she bother? And it was Zhou Renjian who was chatting with the queen, and he couldn't stand it anymore. How can it be that the dignified prince is doing a low-level job like serving food? Putting down his chopsticks calmly, Zhou Renjian raised the wine cup in front of him. "I have always heard about Princess Jingping, but I just met her in person today. I think Princess Jingping is so informal, she will not even drink a glass of wine. Don't you dare to drink with me." Neither Queen Zhen 11 nor Bailey Fengming expected that Zhou Renjian would take the initiative to have a drink with Fan Qinjiao. In Ziliang, men and women have never been seen drinking together. Besides, isn't it a clear sign of bullying when a man asks a woman to drink? Empress Zhen 11 also discovered that Zhou Renjian's hostility towards Fan Qinjiao was much greater than she had imagined. Since young Master Zhou is interested, I would like to accompany you. Fan Kinjao directly picked up the wine cup in front of Bailey Fengming. Zhou Renjian snorted coldly and drank all the wine in the cup. Just as Fan Kinjao followed closely, he saw Zhou Renjian filling the wine cup again. I heard that Princess Jingping was kicked out of the house by her own father when she was a child, and then she lived a life without a father. I would say that Princess Jingping should thank the Queen. Otherwise, as Princess Jingping, let alone it's hard to get married even if you want to be a princess. To put it bluntly, she's just a bastard. Although Bailey Fengming did not speak, his eyes were already gloomy. Empress Zhengzi couldn't bear to hear such extremely unpleasant words. Be kind and frugal, and you must not be rude. Don't slap people in the face when you hit them, don't expose their shortcomings when scolding people. This is really outrageous. If it were any other little girl, I would probably cry and call her mother. But Fan Kinjao has never been a person who is used to other people's bad tempers. Being able to be the crown princess, I really want to thank the Queen for taking care of me. My housework is no secret in the main city, but the young master of the Zhou family is now to be so surprised is a bit too ignorant. Zhou Renjian. This punch was a real blow to the cotton. Zhou Renjian gritted his teeth and paid tribute again. I never thought that Princess Jingping would be so sharp-tongued. She was raised by a mother but not a father. Fan Kinjao replied calmly, young Master Zhou's words don't sound like he is well educated. Looking at Princess Jingping, I finally understand why Fan Mansion can't accommodate you. I won't bother Mr. Zhou with my affairs. At the dinner table, there was a war of words and swords. Empress Zhen 11 really had a headache after seeing it. However, Queen Zhen 11 did not stop Fan Kinjao. Although the Zhou family is now a piece of cake, Zhou Renjian is not qualified to be picky about his daughter-in-law. Bailey Fengming sat silently aside, and his silent indulgence gave Fan Kinjao the greatest favor. Zhou Renjian really didn't expect that Princess Jingping was so venomous that after the dispute, he didn't get any advantage at all. What's more, Fan Kinjao is still sober, he just drank too much first. In order to prevent himself from completely losing face at his grandma's house, Zhou Renjian stood up and said goodbye first. Bailey Fengming, who had been silent all this time, naturally wanted to get up and see her off. Queen Zhen 11 looked at the mess on the table, held Fan Kinjao's hand and said, I didn't expect Zhou Renjian to have such a big opinion against you. If so, I will also give careful consideration to the Zhou family. No matter how fragrant the Zhou family is, if they are not of the same mind, Queen Zhengzi will immediately eliminate them. Fan Kinjao said with a smile, Queen, there is no need to worry too much. If this person really follows the prince wholeheartedly, I will not say anything. At worst, we will just stay on the same page from now on. If you want to get something, you have to give something. Queen Zhen 11 was stunned when she heard Fan Kinjao's clear and steady answer. The whole pot of peach blossom stuffing has bottomed out. Does her future daughter-in-law have such a good drinking capacity? Not long after, the phoenix singing from 100 miles away came back, and Fan Kinjao and the Empress knelt down and left the palace. Along the way, Bailey Fengming didn't say anything about Zhou Renjian's affairs today. Fan Kinjao naturally didn't ask too many questions. A quarter of an hour later, the two people stood outside Fan Kinjao's yard. But before Fan Kinjao had time to speak, Ta Shui rushed out looking for the smell, biting the corner of Fan Kinjao's skirt and pulling him into the door. Fan Kinjao had never seen Ta Shui react like this before, so he quickly followed him through the door. Ta Shui dragged Fan Kinjao all the way to the small courtyard where he temporarily lived. Fan Kinjao smelled a faint smell of blood before he entered the door. When he opened the door and took a look, he saw Mu Yan sitting on the soft couch in a daze with a scarred face. What happened? Fan Kinjao walked over, found the medicine box he had brought, and carefully treated Mu Yan's wounds by candlelight. There are many wounds on Mu Yan's face, but fortunately they are not deep. As long as they are repaired, there will be no scars. Just looking at Mu Yan, whose face was full of flesh, Fan Qingjiao's heart still ached badly. Mu Yan only came back to her senses when the familiar smell of the third sister hit her face. Just looking at the worried look on the third sister, she herself smiled and said, "Third sister, just be fine." Fan Qingjiao frowned, "What can happen to me?" Mu Yan said, "There was a knock on the door just now, saying that the third sister was lost in the palace, and my grandmother had already gone to sleep. I was thinking about finding the third sister by myself, but before I could go far, he was stopped." Then Mu Yan was beaten, but it was too dark outside and she really couldn't see the man's appearance clearly. Fortunately, someone passed by and rescued her, but she found that the other person seemed to be a man, so she ran away in a hurry. Although it happened suddenly, Mu Yan was sure that the person who hit her was a woman. "I pulled this off her head." Mu Yan raised the thing in her hand. Fan Qingjiao took a closer look and saw that it was a jade hairpin in the style of a woman. Mu Yan has always had a quiet temperament. Even during these days when he was in charge of Qingnanzai, he rarely showed up and stayed in the accounting room at the back. There are many female relatives coming to the palace this time. If you think about them one by one, you will probably break your head. The only way to do this is to let Texu find Bailey Fengming, and then use Bailey Fengming's power to investigate. Thinking about it, Fan Qingjiao took the jade hairpin and went out. As soon as he stepped out of the threshold, he saw a tall figure standing under the plum blossom tree in the yard. He stood with his hands behind his back, slightly raising his head to face the blooming plum blossoms. As if he heard the footsteps, he slowly turned around, and Shisui's eyes fell on her. The cool breeze blew by, blowing the clothes, and it was clear and peaceful. It was then that Fan Qingjiao remembered that she had been in such a hurry when she entered that she didn't have time to speak to him. Unexpectedly, he followed her in and stood quietly in the yard waiting for her. Seeing that Fan Qingjiao was distracted for a moment, Bailey Fengming took the initiative to come over, stretched out his hand to tuck the broken hair blown away by the wind behind her ears. But what happened? Fan Qingjiao nodded and handed him the jade hairpin in his hand. "I want to know the owner of this hairpin." Bailey Fengming did not hesitate, took the jade hairpin and nodded, "Let Lin Yi contact you later." Fan Qingjiao originally wanted to send him away, but Bailey Fengming refused. Just like that, a person walked out of the yard. In the last life, Fan Qingjiao and Bailey Rongs had never had this kind of tacit understanding for more than 10 years. There is no need to say anything, and there is no need to do much. There is someone who will always understand your needs, and will be waiting silently behind you. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 397. Chapter 397 is really aimed at her. Mu Yan seemed a little frightened. Even when she fell asleep, she felt uneasy. Fan Qingjiao stayed by her side silently, gently stroking her trembling back with his hands, giving her silent protection. The trembling look of Mu Yan also completely angered Fan Qingjiao. Luring Mu Yan out in her name and then beating her up, this method was all aimed at her. But regardless of whether Mu Yan felt it or not, she had no complaints from the beginning to the end. Mu Yan is kind. Just like before, even if you are assigned to a military prostitute, you will still worry about her safety. At that time, Fan Qingjiao didn't think Mu Yan was good. But now, Fan Qingjiao will definitely make this person pay with blood. Knock knock knock, there was a gentle knock on the window. Fan Qingjiao stood up and walked out of the house, and saw Lin Yi standing by the window. Lin Yi was startled by Fan Qingjiao. He didn't expect that she walked out directly. However, after careful inspection, he noticed that there were other people breathing in the room at this moment. Lin Yi was suddenly warmed by this small attentiveness. Princess Jingping was worried that he would see another person in the room, so she walked out without fear of the cold. There were a lot of casual female relatives this time, but not many of them happened to be wearing jade hairpins. My subordinates made inquiries one after another and confirmed that the jade hairpins came from the second lady of the Pan family. Pan Yujing? Fan Kinjao curled his lips coldly. Sure enough, he came for her. I think it was the last time that Pan Yujing had a grudge against the Han family. The reason why there are so many female relatives coming to the palace this time is precisely because many people have the intention of taking the opportunity to find marriage. I don't know whether the Pan family's ambitions are too great or whether Pan Yujing herself is just irresponsible. Even though they were all blocked from the door of the sixth prince's residence, they still followed him to the palace. Whether it's just the Pan family or Pan Yujing, it doesn't matter how high you want to climb. But Pan Yujing's mistake was that he should not provoke her existence. I wonder, Deputy Young Master Lin, if you can do me another favor. Princess Jingping, please speak. I also ask Deputy Young Master Lin to lend me the eldest princess's hairpin. Lin Yi was stunned, as if he didn't understand the meaning. Fan Kinjao narrowed his eyes slightly. Since it's a snake attack, it's natural to hit it 7 inches. Not only does it make it hurt, but it also makes it impossible for it to stand up again. Lin Yi trembled inexplicably when he saw Fan Kinjao's smile on his lips. Even though he still couldn't understand what Princess Jingping wanted to do, looking at this smile, he was afraid that someone would be in trouble. And it's still a big deal. Lin Yi reported the matter to Bailey Fengming in advance in order to wipe out the idea of Princess Jingping. It turned out to be Bailey Fengming who was reading a book, without even raising his eyelids. Do as she said. What else can Lin Yi do when he sees His Royal Highness the Crown Prince doting on his wife like a maniac? Naturally, Zhu Chai, who had been sent from the eldest princess, was handed over to Princess Jingping the next day. Lin Yi originally thought that this was a perfect match, but he didn't expect that His Highness would directly lend him to Princess Jingping. Lin Yi. Masters, as long as they are comfortable, they don't have to worry about my life or death. In this case, Fan Kinjao was no longer polite. That night, he asked Lin Yi to send a letter to King Nanzai, asking Yuoluo to go to the most famous jewelry shop in the main city to create a batch of exquisite red hairpins. Don't worry. Price, the more expensive the better. For several days, heavy snow has been covering the palace. The palace is located in a barren mountain, so it cannot be as warm as the main city. Emperor Yongchang had to postpone his winter hunting trip and stayed in the palace all day long. Others are also huddled in their own yards, not even leaving the door. Fan Kinjao was not in a hurry and took good care of Mu Yan's face. Tao Yuxian also saw Mu Yan's face, and Fan Kinjao didn't hide anything and told everything. I didn't expect that my Hua family would be in such a bad situation. Anyone from a small family could step on it. The Hua family is famous for being a protector of calves. Now looking at Mu Yan's appearance, what should Tao Yuxian do? Can you not feel bad? Fan Kinjao told his grandmother what he thought. Tao Yuxian nodded, just do whatever you want. Even if our Hua family can't make any big waves, we still have the weight to drown a few people. Fan Kinjao knew that his grandmother was planning to come forward. Since this is the case, Fan Kinjao can't drag it out any longer, otherwise it won't be worth it if he really makes his grandmother angry. Just a few days later, the princes and concubines, who couldn't bear the loneliness in Zhuangzi, proposed a small gathering. There are many women from official families who also participated in it. Once, they were all famous ladies in the main city. Now part of the people have become princes. The others who have not married have hoped to have a backing of the mountain, so as to seek a good relationship for themselves in the palace. Just after Chen hour, several princes and concubines gathered in the courtyard of the eldest prince and concubine. Not long after, the ladies from other official families followed Lu and arrived one after another. The eighth prince looked around and asked curiously, "Why don't you see the prince and the sixth prince?" Pan Yulo snorted, "Just now, the sixth brother and sister said they were feeling unwell and didn't go out." As for the crown princess, who knows, she probably doesn't like us, so she didn't come. The eighth prince's concubine's face was dazzled, but she couldn't follow these words. The second princess also smiled dryly and had no intention of speaking. That day at the mother's house of the sixth princess, the princess killed everyone by herself. She wouldn't dare to mess with people like that easily. The princes and concubines were silent, and the official ladies present did not dare to open their mouths. That's the crown prince. Even the princes and concubines don't dare to discuss it. Who do they think they are? Pan Yujing, who was sitting next to Pan Yulu, smiled and said, "The crown princess was born in such a mansion, so her personality is a bit difficult to get along with. I guess she really can't stand this lively scene." These words are obviously mocking the background of the crown princess. Zhou Ningxi just watched with cold eyes. She does not like Fan Qinjiao, but she is not stupid enough to dare to speak openly. Yan Hanbei sneered and said, "It's just a few dirty money. Otherwise, why do you really think that all cats and dogs can become crown princesses?" The other official ladies also relaxed after hearing this. Princes and concubines are also open-minded, what else are they afraid of? Seeing this, Pan Yujing even took the initiative to instigate the official ladies present. "What we are saying today is just for us sisters to get together and chat. After all, the crown princess is the crown princess. If she offends her, I'm afraid, the crown princess methods will definitely be incompatible with ours." With these words, it was obvious that he was trying to win over the official ladies present. The ladies from the official family were wondering, since this is the second lady of the Pan family, what she said also meant the third prince's concubine. Pan Yula would never take the initiative to make trouble. She naturally understood that Pan Yujing was deliberately trying to please her. Although Pan Yujing made a mess of things in Han Mansion that day, since arriving at the palace, Pan Yujing has been trying to please her in every possible way. Pan Yulo knew Pan Yujing's intention to please her, but she didn't care. If Pan Yujing is devoted to herself, it would actually be beneficial to her to find a good family to get married. Seeing the smile on Pan Yu's face, Pan Yujing lowered her voice and said, "Don't worry, eldest sister, I'm afraid it's too late for the current princess to hold her sister and cry, so she has no time to come to our place for a walk." Pan Yulo nodded slightly and smiled calmly. Of course she heard Pan Yujing tell her about Pan Yujing's attack on the princess sister. It was precisely because of this that she inspired Yan Hanbei to organize this small gathering. The famous official ladies in the city are all here. If she can win them over to her, it will be good for her in the future. As for that Fan Qinjiao, by the time I finished crying while holding my sister in my arms, I was afraid that the daylily would be cold. The main hall was peaceful and everyone was smiling. Under the leadership of sisters Yan Hanbei and Pan Yulu, although the other official ladies did not dare to be blatantly disrespectful to the crown princess, they also made insinuations. Hearing these words, the eighth prince's concubine felt a little restless. The second princess next to her saw it and couldn't help asking softly, "Why are the eighth brothers and sisters trembling?" "I'm just afraid. If the crown princess hears what happened today, then The eighth prince's eyes were wandering if she should find an excuse to speak first, but she caught a glimpse of Menku standing with a familiar look on his face. "Figure, everyone looks like a princess to me now." Before she finished speaking, the eighth prince and concubine felt something was wrong. Looking carefully towards the door again, the eighth prince's concubine exclaimed, "Crown princess!" End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 398. Chapter 398, Tear each other in the face. As the eighth princess shouted out her words, almost everyone looked towards the door. Under the gaze of everyone, they saw Fan Qinjiao slowly approaching alone. The eighth princess was so frightened that she broke out in cold sweat as she thought about what everyone had said to ridicule the crown princess just now. Panula glanced at the eighth prince and concubine impatiently. Why are the eighth brothers and sisters so nervous? Could it be that the princess can also eat people? Pan Yujing laughed out loud after hearing this. Yan Hanbei glanced at Fan Qingjao, who was getting closer, and then grabbed a handful of hazelnuts from the plate in front of him and ate them leisurely, as if he didn't notice Fan Qingjao at all. When the other official ladies saw this, they also froze in embarrassment. Even though Fan Qingjao hasn't officially come through, the Ministry of Rights has already started making arrangements. Logically speaking, when they saw Fan Qingjao, they had to bow and greet him. But now that the eldest princess and the third prince's concubine have no intention of getting up, it is hard for them to salute in a hurry. While everyone was hesitating, Fan Qingjao stepped into the main hall. The eighth prince and concubine, who were almost frightened to death, stood up first to say hello. I thought the crown prince wouldn't come due to the severe cold weather, but I didn't expect that the crown prince would be free today. In fact, Fan Qingjao knew that there would be nothing good to say about the eighth prince concubine in the presence of sisters Yan Hanbei and Pan Yulu, without even looking at the guilty face. But she didn't care either. Since we have to settle the general ledger soon, there is no need to worry about such trivial matters. Fan Qingjao looked at the eighth princess and smiled. It's cold and I really don't want to go out. In addition, my fourth sister is in poor health. I have to take care of her these days. Pan Yujing snorted proudly. So, people should do less harm, otherwise God will not stand it. Fan Qingjao seemed not to have heard Pan Yujing's sarcasm. He looked at everyone and smiled again. A few days ago, I had people prepare some small gifts for the sisters. It just so happened that they were delivered to the palace today. They are just mine. That's my sincerity, please don't dislike it. Gift. The majestic crown princess actually prepared gifts for everyone. All the official ladies present were stunned. There is a saying, if it were them who were standing in the position of the princess today, they would not be able to do such a thing. If they are already the princess, they can just wait to be flattered and please. How could you take the initiative to show kindness to others? A waiter at the palace gate came in carrying a tray. At Fan Qingjiao's signal, the palace attendant walked up to each of the masters holding the tray, and handed the red hairpin on it to everyone present. At first, everyone was curious about how the crown princess could give gifts. As a result, when they received the zuchai, they were all stunned and could not recover. The white jade hairpin is bright and clear, with a few hints of milky white in the jade color, making it even more delicate. Look at the pearl inlaid on the top of the hairpin, which is round, plump and full of luster. Even though everyone present was a well-known official lady in the main city, their hearts beat fast when they looked at this zuchai. It is precisely because they are used to seeing good things that they can better understand the value of this zuchai. Pearls are a luxury product in the main city, and with this top-notch expectation, even they can never afford one. So, the princess just bought a tray of them? This gap. It really cannot be measured with a ruler. It is true that Pan Yujing hates Fan Qingjao, but the Zhu hairpin in her hand really makes her heart beat. Just when Pan Yujing was thinking about how to persuade Pan Yulu to accept it, she saw that Pan Yulu's hand was empty. Perhaps Pan Yulu's free hands were too conspicuous. Soon, others also discovered this. Everyone in the house has something, but the third prince and concubine just doesn't have it. Such a different treatment really shouldn't be too conspicuous. Before Pan Yulu could speak, Yan Hanbei spoke first. What do you mean, Crown Princess? Fan Qingjao smiled and said nothing, as if he didn't understand Yan Hanbei's words. Yan Hanbei didn't allow Fan Qingjao to pretend to be stupid, but this time Pan Yulu got ahead of her and said, I didn't expect the Crown Princess to be so petty. It was just that she made a little fuss in the sixth brother and sister's house last time. I didn't take it to heart at all, but the princess was really upset about it. These words are clearly alluding to Fan Kinjao's blatant revenge. Of course Fan Kinjao knew that Pan Yulu would not say anything nice, and what she was waiting for was Pan Yulu's first break. I thought that Miss Pan would make some progress after becoming the third prince's concubine, but I didn't expect that even after becoming the third prince's concubine, she would still be unable to do things or understand people's words. This statement really leaves no room at all. Everyone present was shocked. Oh my God, come up and tear it into your face? Pan Yulu didn't expect Fan Kinjao to be so disrespectful to her, so she stood up angrily. Even if the crown princess is superior to all of us, she can't be so rude, right? I will definitely have to find concubine Yu to decide this matter. It is normal to seek support from your mother-in-law. It's just that everyone else present gasped when they heard this. Concubine Yu's name was so well known that all the official ladies present were extremely frightened just hearing about it. Fan Kinjao smiled leisurely and said, "That's a coincidence. I also have something to report to the queen. Since you can find your mother-in-law, I can also find my mother-in-law." Pan Yulu's chest was beating with anger. She was about to say something else, but she saw Fan Kinjao unhurriedly taking out a red hairpin from his arms. At first glance, Pan Yulu only thought that Zuchai looked familiar. At first glance, wasn't this the Zuchai she had not seen a few days ago? A few days ago, my fourth sister was beaten for no reason. Although I didn't see the person's hateful face, I accidentally pulled this red hairpin from the person's bun. Fan Kinjao shook slightly. The Zuchai in his hand had dark eyes. Hearing this, Pan Yulu subconsciously looked at Pan Yujing beside her. She knew exactly who beat the princess sister. But Pan Yujing told her afterwards that she accidentally dropped her jade hairpin, so why did it become hers now? Pan Yujing met Pan Yulu's gaze with a look of disbelief. Fan Kinjao paused and continued, "I heard that my fourth sister said that the gangster was so arrogant. Not only did he scratch her face, but he also yelled at her not to mess with the third prince's concubine in the future, and even threatened the third prince. The concubine is an existence that no one can offend. Pan Yulu. These words are clearly saying that she is a murderer." Just at this time, a palace attendant hurriedly entered the door and said, "To inform Princess Jingping, the old lady of the Hua family has gone to the palace to pay homage to the queen." When the people present heard this, their hearts beat heavily. Originally, they thought that the matter was just a one-sided statement by the crown princess. Unless the third princess was crazy, how could she do something so obviously provocative? But now, listening to what the palace official said, the people present had no reason not to believe the crown princess. What else can the old lady of the Hua family do when she goes to the palace to find the queen? Of course I will file a complaint. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 399. Chapter 399, Sisters quarrel and become enemies. Pan Yulu's feet swayed. If it weren't for the chair behind her, she would have collapsed on the ground. Now that Fan Kinjao is holding her Zuchai in his hand, that is clear evidence. If the queen really wanted to investigate this matter seriously, how could she make it clear? Pan Yujing, who was sitting nearby, wanted to find a crack in the ground to hide, let alone speak. The reason why she dared to attack Mu Yan was because even if Mu Yan was beaten, the Hua family would not dare to make it public. The dignified sister of the crown princess was beaten, and the crown princess's face became bright. But who would have thought that the crown princess would be so careless about her own face? Now that things have reached this point, how dare she continue to say anything? Yan Hanbei didn't believe that Pan Yulu could do such a thing, so he stood up and defended himself. The crown princess is really sharp-tongued. None of us saw what happened that day. Could it be that the crown princess is holding a gun now? I don't know whether it was Zhu Chai who was stolen or robbed, but is he framed here with a red mouth and white teeth? Fan Qinjiao looked at Yan Hanbei, who was aside. The eldest princess is right. Everything must be evidenced. The Zhu Chai in my hand is the physical evidence. As for how it came about, I believe the queen will find out. As for the certification, although my fourth sister is hurt, she is not unable to speak. What the gangster shouted that night, my fourth sister will be able to repeat it truthfully in front of the queen. The word evidence reminded Pan Yulu. Seeing Pan Yulu's eyes flash, Fan Qinjiao continued, even if I'm not married now, I'm still the crown princess granted marriage by the emperor. Anyone who hurts my family must be severely punished. There are rules in Ziliang and they are disrespectful to the royal family. Anyone who shows disrespect will be punished with a rod of 40. 40 rods. Where can there be life? Pan Yulu looked at Pan Yujing, who was curled up in a ball next to her, and a terrible answer came to her mind. Pan Yujing seemed to be trying to please her these days, but what was the purpose of trying to please her? Yes, I want to find a good marriage. Even to the point of harming the crown princess's sister in order to find a marriage for herself. If everything was safe and sound, Pan Yulu would not think much about it. But now looking at Fan Qinjiao holding her Zhu Chai, and then thinking of what Fan Qinjiao said about Pan Yujing when he beat Mu Yan. Pan Yulu suddenly understood that Pan Yujing wanted to kill her. As long as she dies, Pan Yujing can legitimately take her place as the successor to the third prince's mansion. Pan Yujing also noticed something was wrong with Pan Yulu's gaze, and hurriedly held her hand and whispered, "Sister, don't listen to other people's nonsense. Those are all things that don't exist." Pan Yulu was not stupid either. She turned around and ordered the maid to search Pan Yujing's room. As for what you are searching for, of course it's Pan Yujing's jade hairpin. Seeing this, Pan Yujing breathed a sigh of relief. Although she didn't know how Fan Qinjiao had Pan Yulu's red hairpin in his hand, her jade hairpin was indeed lost. Fan Qinjiao stood there, calmly taking in Pan Yujing's expression. You want to breathe a sigh of relief now? Is it too early? Seeing that today's gathering was disturbed by Fan Qinjiao, Yan Hanbei gritted his teeth and said, "The crown princess is really a grand event, so many people have to live their lives just by looking at the crown princess's face." Fan Qinjiao didn't even wait for Yan Hanbei to finish what he said, he just sneered and said, "My sister was injured, so I have to step forward. After all, the eldest princess has always been able to eat by herself and the whole family is not hungry. Even if the beams in my house are all collapsed, but I can still sit around and eat and drink." Fan Qinjiao, you bitch, don't be so shameless. The eldest princess made a mistake. Even if you don't call me princess, you still call me Princess Jingping. Now I am and shameless. Do you disdain the emperor's marriage conferment on me, or do you look down on the queen's love for me, my approval? Others didn't even dare to raise their heads when they heard this. One is the emperor, the other is the queen. Who can afford to offend anyone? Yan Hanbei's face became lighter. But before she could speak again, the second and eighth princes and concubines came over to comfort her. The two princes and concubines looked worried, and they really wanted to sew up the eldest prince's broken mouth. They are all sitting here now. If word of this treachery really gets out, they will probably follow suit. The maid who went to search Pan Yujing's house hurried back. Pan Yujing looked at the maid who had left and returned, and a strong light burst out in her eyes. As long as no jade hairpin is found in her house, her innocence can be proven. In this way, Pan Yujing had already thought about how to help Pan Yulu fight back against Fan Qinjiao, and took this opportunity to show her determination to please Pan Yulu. Result. Just saw the maid take out her jade hairpin. Looking at the jade hairpin held up by the maid, Pan Yujing's eyes widened in disbelief. How can it be? Pan Yulu looked at the jade hairpin in front of her, wondering what else she couldn't figure out. She couldn't help but slap Pan Yujing the face. "You bitch. What else do you want to say?" He said he helped her teach the crown princess a lesson, but in the end he just wanted to frame her. Fortunately, the matter came to her face today, otherwise she might not even know how she died. Pan Yujing was whipped and fell to the ground, covering her face and crying with red eyes. "Sister, believe me, it's really not me. I just beat the princess's sister that day, but I didn't say those words," said. When everyone heard this, their eyes widened in shock. Even Yan Hanbei, who was still thinking about how to speak for Pan Yulu, was stunned. Pan Yujing realized later that she had said the wrong thing and wanted to bite off her tongue. Fan Qinjiao sneered. Even if what Pan Yujing is telling the truth now, Pan Yulu will never believe her again. Pan Yulu naturally didn't believe it. If what Pan Yujing said is true, how should we explain Zhu Chai's incident? Pan Yulu really got angry, and regardless of everyone present, she pulled up Pan Yujing's hair again. Pan Yujing was really in pain, and it was in front of so many people. Seeing that Pan Yulu still refused to let go, she said angrily, "Does the eldest sister really want to be so cruel to me? Don't you think about it, myself?" Pan Yulu glared angrily, "You still dare to talk back?" Pan Yujing curled her lips sarcastically, "Eldest sister pretends to be kind outside, but don't you know how vicious she has been to me at home all these years? If it weren't for the support of concubine Pandafai, eldest sister would marry into the third prince's mansion now. How can someone like me get a big sister? Outside is outside, home is home." Among the official ladies present, there are actually not many who are really innocent and harmless. It's just that everyone is well aware of this kind of intrigue behind closed doors. Now that Pan Yujing said it so openly, it was basically rubbing Pan Yulu's face on the ground. Pan Yulu was going crazy and slapped Pan Yujing on the face again. "You bitch. I already knew you had evil intentions. Even if I have evil intentions, it's still better than my elder sister's double dealing. You little bitch, let's see if I don't beat you to death today." What was originally a nice little get-together turned into a quarrel between the Pan sisters. The official ladies present were shocked by what they saw. The eighth prince's concubine was so frightened that her face turned pale, and she kept thinking silently in her heart. Fortunately, she was not the one who endured the prince's concubine. The second princess glanced at Fan Qinjiao, who was standing motionless and watching with cold eyes. The crown princess was indeed a good tactic, but with just a little bit of effort, the Pan sisters turned against each other. Zhou Ningxi was a little startled when she looked at Fan Qinjiao. No matter what happens today, it is certain that the Pan sisters plotted against Fan Qinjiao's sister. Zhou Ningxi asked herself, if her sister had been shaved, I'm afraid she wouldn't be able to be as calm as Fan Qinjiao. It is rare that Zhou Ningxi does not hate Fan Qinjiao's methods this time. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 400. Chapter 400 is really killing me just thinking about it. Yan Hanbei was partial to Pan Yulu after all. Now seeing that Pan Yulu and Pan Yujing were entangled together, she could only suppress her anger and look at Fan Qinjiao and asked, "Is the crown princess satisfied with this situation? If the crown princess's goal is achieved, please invite the crown prince. The concubine will leave first and I won't send you far." The meaning of driving away is so obvious. However, Fan Qinjiao is not angry either. Since the goal has been achieved, she naturally wants to leave. "I never thought that today's affairs would be so lively. Since it is a household matter of the Pan family, I will leave this matter to the third prince and concubine to handle it by herself. I hope that the third prince and concubine will not. It's about being partial." After saying that, he turned around and left. Everyone present looked at it in a daze. With things happening like this today, the third prince and his concubine must be the most worried. As a result, I was worried and didn't say anything, but turned around to be grateful to the crown princess. It's really killing me just thinking about it. Fan Kinjao was justified in this matter, but Fan Kinjao didn't want to make the matter a big deal. The queen will help her, but she doesn't want to cause trouble to the queen. It is easier to handle your own affairs by yourself. On the other hand, Tao Yuxian did go to the palace to visit the queen, but it was just as a greeting from her in-laws. Pan Yulu just had a guilty conscience, but she was afraid that the queen would really come to settle a score with her over this matter. Although she is the daughter-in-law of Concubine Yu is not really close to her. If she causes trouble as soon as she arrives at the palace, Concubine Yu may scold her in some way. Angry and scared, Pan Yulu would not continue to keep Pan Yujing in the palace. That afternoon, the news that Pan Yujing left the palace alone in a carriage spread in Zhuangzi. Pan Yulu is naturally not afraid of the Pan family's accusations. After all, she has the support of her aunt Pan Dfi. Moreover, she is now married to the third prince. Even Pan Yujing's mother does not dare to question her face to face. But Pan Yulu, who was sitting alone in the yard, couldn't help but laugh. Even if she drives Pan Yujing away, other people will not think that she is powerful. Instead, they will think that she is afraid of the majesty of the crown princess. How could Pan Yulu laugh when she thought that she would have to live under Fan Kinjao's majesty from now on? After Tao Yuxian came back from the palace, she learned the news of Pan Yujing's departure. She finally felt a little relieved. She looked at Fan Kinjao waiting at the entrance of the courtyard and said, "This is also to give the Pan family some memory." Fan Kinjao held his grandmother's arm and sighed quietly, "When I go back, I'm afraid my grandpa will have to take care of me." Tao Yuxian was stunned. "How did you provoke him?" Fan Kinjao said, "I've only been here a few days, and my grandmother is in a bad mood. My grandfather feels so sorry for her, so he won't let me explain. The blame has already fallen on me." Tao Yuxian was amused. "You just have an eloquent mouth. Don't worry, Grandma is not angry anymore. Grandma is just worried that Mu Yan will feel wronged." Fan Kinjao was stunned, but he actually had the same worry. The reason why Pan Yujing hurt Mu Yan was because she had a grudge against her, and secondly because she wanted to step on Mu Yan to please Pan Yulu. Fan Kinjao would not let Pan Yujing succeed in his treacherous plan, so he did this to sow discord. "Pan Yujing, don't you want to climb up by stepping on my Hua family's daughter? Then I will pull you into the dust with my own hands." As for Pan Yujing's future, Fan Kinjao is not worried about it. With today's events happening like this, I'm afraid Pan Yulu hates Pan Yujing to death. So Pan Yujing wants to find a good marriage under Pan Yulu's nose. Hee. It's faster to dream. This method seemed beautiful and deadly, but for Mu Yan, she didn't get a word of apology. "Grandma is tired after all the hard work. Why don't you go inside and rest first, and I'll go see Mu Yan," Fan Kinjao suggested. Tao Yuxian thought that it was easier for her daughter to talk to each other and she didn't have so many scruples, so she nodded, "Go ahead and persuade her properly. In this world, not all grievances can wait for a word of apology." Fan Kinjao nodded, first helped his grandmother back into the house, and then turned around and walked towards the backyard. Ever since the accident, Mu Yan has been living in Fan Kinjao's yard. At the moment, as soon as Fan Kinjao walked into the yard where he lived, he saw Mu Yan sitting in a daze on the stone bench. Mu Yan raised her head slightly and looked at the gloomy sky, her dark eyes empty. It wasn't until a pair of hands wrapped around her neck that she came back to her senses in shock. When she saw that the person coming was third sister, Mu Yan instantly relaxed her body and asked, "Third sister is back." Fan Kinjao touched Mu Yan's frozen face and said, "Why are you sitting here? Even if you believe in your third sister's medical skills, you don't have to embarrass yourself like this." Mu Yan knew that the third sister was deliberately trying to make her happy, but she still couldn't help but smile and roll her eyes. Seeing this, Fan Kinjao quickly pulled Mu Yan into the house. Fan Kinjao had no intention of hiding Pan Yujing's matter from Mu Yan, he simply told the truth. Surprisingly, Mu Yan did not feel disappointed. Actually, as long as the third sister is safe, I will feel at ease. At this point, Fan Kinjao became curious. You have been depressed these days. Hearing these words, Mu Yan's newly healed face turned red for no reason. Fan Kinjao was even more confused, but where is the discomfort? Mu Yan lowered her head, and after a long while she finally said, I was actually thinking about the person I saved that day. It was only then that Fan Kinjao remembered that Mu Yan did indeed say that he was rescued that day, but she was only thinking about Mu Yan's injury and ignored it. Just looking at Mu Yan's appearance now, Fan Kinjao couldn't help but doubt the intentions of the person who saved Mu Yan. After all, the emperor's visit to the palace was full of chaos, and someone might have had other thoughts. Mu Yan seemed to see what the third sister was thinking, and hurriedly explained, he really saved me. Although the second young lady of the Pan family had run away at that time, I was frightened at the time. If it weren't for he helped me up, and I didn't know how long I would have to lie on the road, but when I came to my senses, I wanted to come back quickly, but I didn't have the chance to say thank you to him. Fan Kinjao finally heard it. Emotional, my careless sister doesn't know anything else except that he is a man. I thought that when I asked Lin Yi to find Pan Yujing, at least he had a jade hairpin. In this vast sea of people, there is only one gender male. I'm afraid Lin Yi will cry out in embarrassment if he finds out. I will remember this matter. If there is a chance, I will ask someone to help you find out. Fan Kinjao comforted Mu Yan. Girls are always crazy about feelings. It would be great if they are really destined to find that person, but if she really couldn't find it, and she didn't want to give up Mu Yan's hope now. Although Mu Yan is timid and doesn't like to talk, she understands everything. Now that the third sister has said this, I will not ask for anything more. End of this chapter.